Hello, my name is Jennifer Ferreira, and thank you for joining us today. My guest made headlines with his resignation as leader of Ontario's Progressive Conservative Party last year. Fast forward through sexual misconduct allegations, several political campaigns, and the release of a memoir, he's still making headlines today, this time as the mayor of Brampton. Joining me now in studio is Mayor Patrick Brown. Thank you so much for joining us today, Patrick.
Great to be on your show.
Patrick, I would like to congratulate you on your victory back in October. You ran a tight race against the incumbent Mayor Linda Jeffrey, who was seeking re-election for a second term. Your aggressive campaign got you nearly 47,000 votes, almost 4,000 more than your opponent. What message do you think your victory sent to Ontarians, residents, and politicians alike?
Well, first of all, I'm grateful for the residents of Brampton for this opportunity to serve, to get Brampton back on track, to focus on creating jobs, to focus on public safety. I think the message it sent around Ontario and Canada is that we want Brampton back on track, that frankly there was a lot of goodwill in the community for my time in public service. And I found that a lot of residents didn't like the way I was treated at Queen's Park. They rallied behind me. Listen, I wouldn't wish false allegations on my worst enemy, and the fact that the people of Brampton wanted to continue to see me in public service is something that I'm so grateful for, and I want to honor their trust by doing a great job here in Brampton. And so I'm working day in and day out, 7 days a week, early morning to late at night, to make sure this city is in a good position.
Now, just 2 months into your new role as mayor, and Bramptonians have already seen you speaking out against cuts to GO train services, as well as advocating for greater investment in public safety. What else do you hope to accomplish within the first 100 days in office?
So let me speak to the first part of that in terms of the GO train. In a broader context, I said we're not going to be a city that quietly disappears when we're not treated appropriately. We're not going to be a city that allows the province and the federal government to treat us as second class. And what happened more recently was the Premier and his government decided to cancel the express train to Brampton. They rejigged the schedule of GO train, and it was disastrous. This 450 express train, in the midst of rush hour, it caused commuter chaos. And it might have been before that Brampton would have just complained and disappeared. We weren't going to do that this time. The city filed an official complaint with the province. We petitioned our MPPs, we petitioned the Minister of Transportation, and I said during the municipal election campaign, I'm going to draw media attention to areas that our city isn't being treated appropriately. I'm going to make sure we shine a light on this city, and I know how governments work. When you shine a light on something, they respond. And so I want to give credit right here to Councillor Hakirat Singh, Councillor Pat Fertini, and Councillor Paul Vicente. They, with very little notice, joined me on a GO train ride where we invited Global TV, CP24, right. CBC to go live with us on that canceled train, the replacement one. And that was live 30-minute national TV, and the government reacted. They were embarrassed. We embarrassed the government, and they announced more recently that the express train will be back. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to stand up for ourselves. We're not going to be bullied by anyone. We're going to stand up for the city. We pay the same provincial taxes. We pay the same federal taxes. And I'm going to be determined to make sure we get the same quality of services.
Of course. Now, going back to the question, is that sort of a general mantra that you hold for the next 100?
It's going to be a general
days?
Mantra throughout the next 4 years. This incident happened within the first 100 days, and so it got media attention, but we're going to have the same approach when it comes to education, when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to infrastructure. I've already spoken to both levels of government, provincial and federal, about what I expect, and we're working in a very rigorous fashion to make sure that we're able to achieve what we want to as a city, and that requires provincial and federal partners. In terms of the first 100 days, The focus has certainly been on public safety. I joined the Peel Police Services Board. We're going to be taking an interesting approach on public safety over the next coming months. We'll be hiring 55 new officers. We're also going to be looking at greater integration of mental health. On an economic development front, we have started with councillors and the mayor together touring local businesses, our large companies, to focus on retention, but we're also making pitches to bring businesses to Brampton. We'll be setting up our own foreign direct investment program. We've actually created a community incentive program for businesses that are going to come into Brampton. I think if there's two central themes in the first 100 days. It's a zealous focus on economic development with, on a regional council level, a real interest in public safety. But I note that within the 100 days, we've also had the cannabis issue fall in our laps and on top of that, we've been really working as a team, and so there's been a lot of effort into gelling as a team of council and the mayor.
I'd like to look now at transit. An already strained relationship between the City of Brampton and Metrolinx went off the tracks when Ontario's Minister of Transportation, Jeff Urick, made the announcement that there would be some changes to services on the Kitchener line, as you had mentioned, the idea of cutting that 450 express train from Union Station. What was originally touted as a 25% increase in service overall came at the expense of this 450 train. And so I'd like you to tell me a bit more of the complaints that you had received from residents in regards to this.
So my wife takes the GO train every morning. She works at Sick Kids Foundation, and she was telling me horror stories. And I was looking at my social media and I was getting complaints and complaints. So I told my wife, I said, take a video for me to see so I can understand what's happening. And she took a video and some photos, and it was horrible. We were treating commuters like cattle, like sardines. This is not what I expected of GO train, and the fact the province was saying it was improved, ridiculous. And that's when I said I got to see this myself, and so I went down with members of council to the morning to visit commuters in the morning, and I had a few commuters tell me, you really got to be on the afternoon train, the one that after the canceled 450, if you really want to see how bad it is. And that's the one I invited the media to join me on. But commuters were livid. It affected their ability to pick up their kids after daycare. It affected their work schedules. It created chaos. The government messed up. The government made a mistake. And what I told the provincial government is, it's one thing to make a mistake and fix it. It's human nature. People make mistakes. But if you're stubborn and you stick to a mistake, that's where we have a real issue. That's where there's a failure of leadership. And I want to thank our MPPs, Prab Sakari and Amarjot. They took our complaint seriously. The Minister of Transportation responded to my official complaint on behalf of the city within 3 hours, saying that he'd look into it. I said that it can't be a matter of months. It can't be a matter of weeks. I wanted it fixed in a matter of days. So they did work quickly, and particularly Amarjot Sandhu. I asked him to get on the phone on a Sunday night with the transport minister. I said, he is a minister because you got elected. He's a minister because you are an MPP. Remind him of that and tell him to fix this. And I appreciate that Amarjot got on the phone late on a Sunday night calling ministers in his government. And ultimately, they fixed the mistake they created. But let me say, it shouldn't have happened in the first place. I'm glad it was fixed. It shouldn't have happened in the first place.
And so, as you said, they did fix the mistake. The 4:50 p.m. express train has been reinstated. And so this is sort of a victory for the residents of Brampton. Would you say that? It is.
It's a victory for the residents of Brampton, and it shows that we're not going to be bullied, and that we will stand up, but we will be heard. And that's what federal and provincial government should expect from our city in the years ahead.
Now, you mentioned this idea of federal and provincial partners, and you had recently met with other mayors as well as federal officials as part of the Big City Mayors Caucus in Ottawa. Now, the purpose of the meeting was obviously to discuss local needs and sort of make them a priority in the next federal budget. What were some of the issues that you brought to the table?
So, I've had a few interactions so far with the Prime Minister, and credit where credit's due. He reached out shortly after my election as mayor of Brampton, asking how he can help. We've met now on 2 occasions, and I take his interest in the city of Brampton very positively. Now, whether it follows through with funding, that's for him
Remains to be seen.
That's for him to prove. But I'd say his interest right now is encouraging. We had a very productive day of meetings in Ottawa. I met with Infrastructure Minister Champagne, Intergovernmental Affairs Minister Dominic LeBlanc, the Finance Minister Bill Morneau, and of course with the Prime Minister.
Of course. And so in terms of issues that were brought to the table, does it go back to this concept of funding for public safety and whatnot?
Well, actually, there are areas the federal government can invest, and there are areas the provincial government can invest. And so our conversations focused on one, infrastructure for transit. To have modern transit in Brampton, I'm going to need the federal government's assistance.
Of course.
Disaster mitigation. We have a Riverwalk program that is essential for our city because we've had real issues with a floodplain. So we spoke about that. We spoke about transit in terms of the growth of the transit system, that the federal funding has not matched population growth. And on a public safety front, to a lesser extent, the federal government gives funds to the province for cannabis, and that money for policing has not flowed in a fair manner to municipalities. Right now, we're only getting about 15% of the policing costs covered, and so I did raise that with federal officials, and so there's a wide variety of topics that were covered.
Now, you've also been working on the next budget for the region of Peel. What can Bramptonians expect from this?
So right now, Bramptonians are affected by 3 different budgets. Your property taxes will go to the regional budget, education, and municipal services. And so on the regional budget, it takes care of things like waste management, policing. Our focus on the regional budget is I wanted more resources for public safety. And so I'm glad that we're going to have 55 new police officers. Right now there are crimes that happen in our community that don't get responded to, and that causes crimes to grow. I want to have zero tolerance on crime in our community, and these 55 new officers will be important. On the education portion, the province has said that, it has been for a number of years, frozen, that rate you pay on your education
will remain the same.
Will be the same. And our city budget we're voting on in March, and I'm committed to bringing in a freeze on taxes on the city budget. I thought municipal taxes have escalated for far too long. If we want to be competitive and bring business in, our municipal budget needs to have a tax freeze.
So that's your plan for property taxes, is to freeze them?
We're going to have a freeze on the city budget. Now, obviously, if the province chooses to raise education taxes, we can't control that. We're hearing that also is going to be a zero, and it looks like the regional budget will be a slight increase. But overall, this will be the first municipal freeze in a long time. Frankly, I can't remember the last time there was a tax freeze in Brampton.
Now, you mentioned this idea of adding 55 more police officers to Peel Police. As a way of sort of creating safety within the city, I'm wondering whether or not you believe adding more police officers is the primary way of establishing safety within the city.
It's one tool in the toolbox, and so I believe having police officers to respond to calls is important. We can't have police calls that go unresponded to.
Right.
And right now, there are unfortunately calls that they're simply not priorities, and so they don't get attended to, and so that will be fixed. But I also believe we need more recreation. We need to get young people off the streets. We need more arts and culture, community programs, and so we have a plan for increased recreation in our community, and also to make recreation affordable. I also believe that you can't criminalize mental health. That's why I've spoken a lot about having the COAST program, where a mental health worker responds with a police officer. You use the skills of a psychiatrist. There are important tools within mental health that need to be utilized. Frankly, the call volumes to police on mental health are astronomical. And sometimes you have a police officer waiting 6-7 hours in a hospital when their skill set is better utilized maintaining public safety on the street.
The city recently voted, as you had mentioned previously, in favor of allowing cannabis retail stores to operate within the city's borders. Now, the decision has not come without opposition, for sure, when it comes to concerns regarding either enforcement or just maintaining public safety. And so I'd like to know why you chose to opt in to this.
So there was a large school of discussion here about what Brampton should do. Should we opt in or should we opt out? We said we want to do public consultation first. A lot of cities took the vote and didn't actually engage the community. We had a public town hall, a tele-town hall. We had surveys online. We had surveys at community centers. We really engaged the public, and we waited to the last day to have our vote.
Delayed it.
Delayed it.
Initially, it was meant to be held earlier.
We delayed it to get public input, and boy, we did. I think we had a record amount of public input. When I looked at the input, there were those who said we don't want to opt in, and they said we don't want marijuana to be legalized. Well, in all fairness, that's not a municipal decision. The legalization was done by the federal government. Right. And that ship has sailed. I know there's those that don't. Listen, I've never used cannabis. I have no interest in ever using cannabis, but I'm not gonna say we can affect that. The federal government has legalized marijuana. It was Justin Trudeau's promise in the last election. He won a majority and he passed that. Now, fast forward 4 years later, the opposition parties are saying they're not going to change this. So this is not changing. The government of Canada supports the legalization. The governing party, the Liberal Party, the Conservatives, the Democrats, the Green Party have all said they're not going to revisit the legalization.
Right, so it's not changing
So
anytime
that ship
soon.
has sailed. We have a simple choice as cities. If you opt in, you are given resources for policing of drug-impaired driving and to shut down black market operations. If you opt out, you don't get that funding. Right now in Brampton, even though there's no retail, there's black market dispensaries. The black market dispensaries, unfortunately, are not regulated. The cannabis could be laced with other substances, more dangerous. They're run by criminal organizations, and they pop up before new ones pop up by the time police shut down an existing one. The best way to stomp out the black market is to have legal dispensaries.
So it's a way of creating a safer environment.
It's a safer environment, but also saying, I want to treat drug-impaired driving as seriously as we do alcohol-impaired driving. Right now, you can purchase cannabis online at the Ontario Cannabis Store. You can purchase it at shops in Toronto. You can purchase it at shops in adjacent municipalities. There's marijuana in Brampton right now. And for me to say, I'm not going to take the police funding to enforce drug-impaired driving.
I'm not going to address this.
I'm not going to address this. May be the easy choice and maybe the popular choice, but it's not the right choice. Because this is not a debate over legalization. And when I'm in politics, I want to do the right thing. When I'm in public service, I don't want to do what's the easy choice, the popular choice, the convenient choice. I always want to do what is right. And that's why I voted to opt in, to get the police funding from the province, to shut down the black market dispensaries, and to have zero tolerance on drug-impaired driving.
Now, Patrick, similar to the drastic cut in the number of Toronto City Councillors that we saw months ago, the provincial government recently announced plans to review Ontario's regional governments, including the region of Peel. What are your thoughts on this?
So first of all, this is not my top priority. I know regional governance is something that we always like to talk about at municipal conferences, and there are problems with regional governance. Brampton is underrepresented, and ultimately there may be some duplication of services. But in terms of my list of priorities, ending hallway medicine, fixing the overcrowded classrooms, having our own university. There are lots of things I'd like the province to work on. This is not, the top priority. Escalating crime, like there's so many things I'd like the province to work on before this, but ultimately they've arrived at this is something they want to devote their time and energy to right now. If they do, we'll welcome efficiencies if they can be found. If they want to make Mississauga and Brampton single-tier cities, well, we'd love to see the numbers and see if it makes sense. Right now, we pool our resources. If they were to dismantle that, what does that mean? Does that mean we have our own police force? Does that cost more per capita? I'd like to see the numbers, but I'm always willing to look at it objectively.
So you're open to the idea, but you need more information.
Always open, and we'll be objective at it. I just want to stress there are about 20 other things I would have preferred the province focus their energy on before regional governance reform, much more pressing matters. When I get phone calls at City Hall at someone who's upset about hallway medicine, they're upset about escalating crime, and no one's calling in to say, I'm upset about regional governance.
Understood. Before we get to each of those topics, focusing just a little more on this concept of regional governance, Mississauga Mayor Bonnie Crombie has come on the record to say that she is in favor of the review and that she has also voiced a sort of desire for the city of Mississauga to leave the region of Peel. I'm wondering whether or not this is something you think would be feasible for the city of Brampton.
So I've had many conversations with Bonnie Crombie about regional governance. She doesn't want to have a region, similar to Hazel. Hazel McCallion wanted Mississauga out of the region. So if Mississauga is out of the region, there is no region. You'd have obviously Brampton and Mississauga would stand on their own.
Do you think it'll save money on things like policing and waste management, as you had mentioned?
Right now, I think we probably save money by pooling those resources. So I'd really have to see how it would actually save funds.
With a rapidly growing population, one thing that Brampton is still missing is its own university. The province previously announced a contribution of $90 million to the initiative, but it has since pulled out. The city of Brampton, however, seems to be expressing its intention to continue with the project. And so I'd like to know how the city of Brampton plans on making up for this lost money.
So the province is on the wrong side of history. I know they made a decision to cancel the Francophone University, to cancel the universities in Milton, Markham, and Brampton. They've canceled all post-secondary education growth in Ontario.
Right.
Now, young people in Brampton and Milton and Markham or Francophone Ontario deserve the right to have post-secondary education. Education is an equalizer of opportunity, and I believe at one point the province will understand that and appreciate that. So we're proceeding with our plans. Previously, it wasn't going to open until 2022. And so we're proceeding as if we're going to get a provincial partner that will support this project at some point. Ryerson University is not going anywhere. The city of Brampton is not going anywhere. I want to have a university in my city. I want to have a university in Brampton, and we're determined to make it happen.
You mentioned finding a provincial partner. What might that look like? What kind of partners would be in mind? So
just like how the province has changed their opinion on a number of files recently, we're going to proceed with this partnership and hope that the province, whether it's this government or a future government, will understand that young people in Brampton deserve educational opportunities. To build a campus, to build a plan, to build the university, it takes time. The previous schedule was 2022, and we're going to continue to do the due diligence and work to make sure we can have an academic opportunity in our community.
Does that mean that what may initially be a sort of deadline of 2022 may get extended?
We're looking at all angles at this point. Everyone except for the province is at the table. We have actually growing interest from other institutions at the table. And so it's premature to share with you the shape and form that we're heading. But let me just say that the city of Brampton, our entire council, and our academic partners are committed to making sure this happens.
Okay. Another issue plaguing the city certainly involves healthcare. One full-service hospital for over 600,000 residents has undoubtedly resulted in greater prescriptions for hallway medicine, not to mention the shortage in the number of beds within the city. I know that healthcare is something that falls under the jurisdiction of the provincial government, but I'd like to know what your plans are in regards to perhaps gaining more funding as well as resources to sort of tackle this.
We have the lowest ratio of hospital beds per capita in the province. This is an issue that needs to be addressed. Health Minister Christine Elliott understands that in Brampton, we're very frustrated, very disappointed. the government has announced new funding for hallway medicine. We have not seen a penny of it yet in Brampton. So this remains a hot topic for the city of Brampton, and we will increasingly be driving attention towards the poor conditions in Brampton, and we expect the provincial government to come to the table. It's in their self-interest. They have a government because they won in the 905. If they're not willing to provide quality health care in the 905, well, they're licensed to govern. I don't know how those MPPs will explain it back at home that you have half the healthcare services if you live here in the 905 in Brampton.
Right. Another topic, perhaps not so much under municipal jurisdiction and more so provincial, is this concept of climate change. I'd like to know what some of your thoughts are when it comes to climate change, and perhaps how the province is dealing with climate change.
You love asking me provincial questions. You'd be a great Queen's Park reporter.
Oh dear.
So, but having said that, I'm always willing to answer any question. I care about the environment. Bill Davis, who's one of my mentors, created the Ministry of the Environment. I was the only Conservative leader in Canada when I was in provincial politics that supported the National Climate Change Accord in carbon pricing. I believe we have a responsibility to the next generation to take care of our environment. When I was a young MP up north in Simcoe County, I managed to petition the federal government to invest $50 million in cleaning up Lake Simcoe. My first school project that got me interested in politics was on acid rain and the acid rain treaty that the government of Canada and the United States had negotiated. I care passionately about the environment. The city of Brampton is going to be a good environmental steward. We're working on environmental projects. We have ambitious goals right now on waste diversion. We're going to be launching a new plan on active transportation. We're going to increasingly be cleaning up our green spaces and water bodies. We're going to be a role model when it comes to environmental stewardship. The fact that the province has taken out climate change as a word that they're supposed to use in the Ministry of the Environment, for me, is very disappointing. But I can't worry about what they're doing. My focus is on the city of Brampton.
What are you most looking forward to accomplishing as mayor of Brampton?
I want to make Brampton the envy of Ontario. I want people in other municipalities to say, I wish we had it as good as the people of Brampton. But to do that, we have a lot of work cut out. I need to bring industry and jobs here. I want to enhance our recreation. I want to have recreation that reflects the mosaic of cultures. That means investing in things like cricket, where we don't have proper cricket pitches. We just voted, by the way, in December to add lights to one of our outdoor fields so that we can have cricket. We're going to be investing in the proper infrastructure to have cricket, but it's across the board. I want to have recreation infrastructure. I want to make sure we have quality transit. I want to make sure we have quality healthcare and education. It's about having a city that you can live, work, and play in, and that's what we're throwing our heart into.
What are you least looking forward to?
Least looking forward to? That's a tough question. Listen, I obviously have strained relationships with the Premier. He's not on my Christmas card list per se, and so obviously dealing with a Premier that you don't agree with philosophically, it can be challenging, and so that's one of the things that I find strained.
Okay. Now, the last time you were here, Patrick, you said you didn't like the term political comeback in sort of reflecting on the past year or so, but going back to where you were before and looking at where you are now, one would say that there's a sort of redemption that comes with that. Would you say that that's the case?
Well, listen, I think the fact that the people of Brampton so overwhelmingly came to my support, despite the fact up until the day before the filing deadline, I was not even contemplating running for mayor of Brampton. The fact that they so overwhelmingly came to support someone that wasn't in the picture of municipal politics, for me was a vote of redemption, saying that they didn't believe any of the BS, that they thought what happened was wrong, and they've given me this opportunity to continue to serve. But I want to add into that, the success we're having right now at Brampton City Hall is because of this really talented council that was elected, and the voters of Brampton not only gave me a chance, but they elected a council that's very talented. There's some people that I hadn't worked with before, and the wealth of experience they bring. And I should mention two of them in particular because they're from Portuguese backgrounds. Paul Vicente, an expert in communications, is a community activist, a real asset to council. Marta Medeiros worked for the Council of Europe. The guy is an encyclopedia of knowledge, and those are just two of 10 councillors that we have that are really strong, a lot of depth. And so, it's been a crazy year, it's been a tumultuous year, but as I look back to it, I do with fondness. I got married to my partner, Genevieve, had the successful municipal election, and now I get to work with a great team at City Hall. And so as I look towards the future, it's with a lot of optimism.
Do you have a final message that you'd like to give to the residents of Brampton in regards to what the next 4 years might look like?
My advice to anyone watching is invest in Brampton. Invest in Brampton, because right now Brampton means business. You want a good investment? If you invest in any business in Brampton, if you invest in the city of Brampton, it is going to do well. We're going to see this city go in a very positive trajectory. This is a time to be in Brampton, and it's going to be an exciting journey.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Patrick. It was a pleasure having you as usual.
Well, I look forward to the next time we can sit down.
Correio da Manhã Canadá televisão, 24 horas por dia no canal 893 da Bell Fibe, agora também na City TV. Todos os domingos, entre as 11h30 e o meio-dia, acompanha CMC TV, com reportagens da comunidade, entrevistas, entretenimento e muito mais. CMC TV agora também na City TV. Mais televisão, melhor televisão.